Okay. So, we're looking at Sefer Ha-Aggadah, the Petiha Od Aleph Bet, where they speak about the difference between the different genres of the Torah, the different parts of the Torah. Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua Omer, Shalosh Midot Betalmidei Chachamim. There are three different types of scholars: Even Gazit, Even Pina, Even Psifas. So he takes the analogy this time from the field of construction. If you know in Yerushalayim, you ever saw what they call Even Yerushalmi, the way they build the buildings. So the Grand is built like that.
No, the Grand has also.
Oh, so there was this was how Yerushalayim was built for many generations. The British actually made it a law that it has to continue the same style. In the 50s, they changed it. They built in Katamon and other places, cement, Kiryat Yovel. But then they, for about 10-15 years, I think they overlooked this law. But now most of the old buildings in Jerusalem are built like that. So the way they worked the stones originally was because of convenience. You have to build the stone into the building. You can't chisel hew all parts of the stone. It's a lot of work. So you only do what you need in order to fit it into the building. So even Gazit was a type of stone. We call it hewn stones that was straight only from one side, and the rest were untouched, rough. Even Pina, because it had to go in the corner, like we said in the Hallel today. Even Masua Boni Ma'ita Lerosh Pina. The cornerstone had to be hewn from both sides, from two sides. But even Psifas, it's something that doesn't even go into construction. It's the mosaic stone, which in the time of the rabbis, the time of the Mishnah, was very common. The Greeks brought it into Israel. If you go to the Israel Museum in Yerushalayim, you could see an amazing display of mosaic floors and walls from ancient Israel. The synagogue, also one synagogue from Turkey or Syria, Dura Europus, where you see the full zodiac.
Definitely Syria, Iraq, not Turkey, Syria.
Yeah, really? Dura Europus is so okay.
Turkey, Syria, and Jordan.
Yeah, Has v'shalom. I don't know if the Syrians.
What do they call mosaic? Mosaic is
the small stones, right? Tiny stones, right?
Yeah.
But those tiny stones have to be hewn from all corners, so they can fit perfectly with the rest. So Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua says this: Even Gazit Ketzad, the stone which is hewn only from one side. What is it? Zet Talmid Sheshana Midrash, and he refers to Midrash Halacha, meaning someone who knows the pasuk, the text in the Torah, and how to interpret it to get to the practical law. So, for example, if we take the pasuk, Basukot teshavu shivat yamim, you should dwell in the sukkah shivat yamim. You come in and say, what does it mean? It says sukkah is a structure with three corners, with three walls. Teshavu, to dwell, means to live in the sukkah the way you live at home. This is what he knows. But he's limited to this knowledge. He cannot take it to the next level. He only knows sort of like mechanically he can recite all these sources. Even Pina Kitzad, זה תלמיד ששנה מדרש והלכות. בזמן שתלמיד חכם נכנס אצלו, שואלו במדרש אומר לו, בהלכות אומר לו. זהו אבן פינה, שיש לה שני פיות בלבד. So the scholar who learned not only the Torah text and how you take the halachot from it, but also what he calls halachot and we call Mishnah, the compilation of the halachot. So he has the final format, not just the process of how you got from the pasuk to the interpretation, but the compilation of halachot. So, for example, when you come to sukkah, he could say sukkah shikva lemala me'esrim ama psula, and if sukkah is higher than 20 amot, this is the law. If it's lower than 20 amot, it's fine. Lemata me'asarat fahim, if it's less than 10 fahim, pasul, and so on. He could recite all these halachot, and he also understands the type of negotiation that happens. So he's more dynamic in his understanding of halakha. If you only know the original product, this is the pasuk, this is the halakha, you don't know the process. So Rabbi Elazar says in order to have a dialogue, you have to understand deeper the meaning of the halakha. But what is Even Psifas, the mosaic stone? זהו אבן, זה תלמיד ששנה מדרש והלכות ואגדות ותוספות. So someone who can answer, can discuss all these issues is a mosaic stone, and that is the person who knows midrash and halachot, the midrash deriving the halakha from the pasuk, halachot, the mishnah, compilation of halachot, Aggadah is all the non-legal interpretation of the rabbis, like we mentioned, the stories, the commentary on the Torah, moral, ethical lessons, and so on. The Tosafot is the additional interpretation, not the Tosafot that we have today. Back then, that was the additional commentary on all these things. So this is someone who's well-rounded, has a well-rounded education, and that is Even Psifas. He could fit, or has this versatility that could answer the needs of everyone who comes to ask him a question. So what Hachamim are recommending here, what Rabbi Elazar ben Shammua is saying, is that in order to be a true Talmid Chacham, you have to have broad horizons, and not only look into the dry legal part of the Torah, but also the Aggadah, like we mentioned the other day, that you learn more from the narratives and from the social, the moral, ethical teachings than you could learn sometimes from the law itself. But if we take this concept and we apply it to today's reality and the fields of knowledge that we have, then we say that the Talmid Chacham should be learned, should be knowledgeable, not only in the language of the Torah, but he should know secular studies, should understand science, should understand all these things, because they are all serve to enhance his knowledge and understanding of the Torah. As a matter of fact, in the Sephardic yeshivot, for over 1,000 years, part of the curriculum was always what is called the trivium, the three. Today people say trivia; they think it's the secondary trivial. The trivium really was the three main subjects that people had to learn, which were math and language and rhetoric. People had to know how to write, how to talk, how to calculate. Then they added to this music and analytical sciences, logical analysis. This was part and parcel of the Talmud, the way the yeshivot in Sefarad used to work. You had to know another language, Latin, Roman. It was part of the curriculum. Unfortunately, today, this became not only secondary, but even for some people in the Orthodox world, rejected, as they think this is, if I study English or French or whatever language it is, or math, it will take away from the time that I can dedicate to Torah study. So that's why we have now this ongoing debate in Israel about what is called limudei liba, core studies.
What does that mean?
So core studies, mainly they refer to math and English. The level of
No biology.
a little bit of that, but first math and English. That the level of math in the Orthodox school in Israel is abysmal, is really miserable, and English is non-existent. But part of the reason they do that is to sort of keep the lid on the yeshiva kids, because if you don't have English today, you can't do anything. Any professional work that you're going to take on requires English in any field. The literature, programming, coding, everything is necessary. It's also a cultural barrier. TV, movies, songs, people don't know what is being said. They cannot travel because of that. It was a big war, and eventually the Orthodox community won in Israel, where they said don't interfere with our schools. There is a lawsuit going on in England now between kids of private schools, private Orthodox schools, against the government. The parents are suing the government, or the students themselves are suing the government. They said that the government had to impose the law of education on these schools, And what they're arguing is that it was easier for the government to ignore it because they didn't want to create political tension. But this is happening also in the ultra-Orthodox schools in England and in the United States as well. Only it doesn't happen with all Orthodox schools. It's the most, what we call the ultra-Orthodox or isolationists, like in Borough Park or Monroe, where you talk to people who were born in America, second and third generation in America, and cannot speak normal English. Not like mine, really. Right? You talk to them, you think they're talking Hungarian. But it's not, it's not Hungarian. And the Hungarian, by the way, is 200 years old. They brought it from Hungary. In Hungary, they don't talk this language anymore. Linguists came to analyze Hungarian Jews in Israel because they preserved a dialect that was dead in Hungary.
What do you speak now?
No, it's Hungarian, but a different dialect. Like you wouldn't understand
But
it.
their main language is Yiddish.
Their main language is Yiddish, so they cannot communicate well in Hebrew or in English. Anyone of that community turns, like let's say in his 20s or 30s, decides to, okay, I had enough, learning to understand. I want to go to work. Can't go anywhere. There's nothing that they could do. And they all of a sudden
very much against speaking Hebrew,
right?
Because Hebrew is like Lashon HaKodesh.
Right. So Hebrew, they also
it.
rejected because they said that Hebrew was part of the Zionist movement, and originally they rejected it because it was the modern Hebrew was revived by Eliezer ben Yehuda.
Right.
And now they claim that it's Lashon HaKodesh and it's only reserved for holy engagements, holy conversation. But that's not the reason. The real reason is that they identified Hebrew with Zionism. For the Sephardim, it was never a problem because Sephardim always spoke Hebrew. If they didn't speak Hebrew, they spoke Arabic, which was many of them spoke Arabic, which is a sister language. And the Talmidei Chachamim, if you compare the writing of the Sephardic scholars to Ashkenazi scholars, especially from the 15th century on, there's a tremendous difference in terms of the mastery of the language. And when you come to 18th, 19th century Europe, the Lithuanian rabbis like Rabbi Leibovich, Rabbi Naftali Trop, and others that we studied in yeshiva, their Hebrew was indecipherable. It was very problematic.
You expect that when they were surrounded by languages that have nothing.
100%, right. Rabbi Meir Mazuz brings an interesting example where they didn't know Hebrew to the extent that they affected their understanding of halakha, and they got confused when they were discussing the halachot of Erev Shabbat and Erev Tzom, whatever it is. So in Hebrew, when you say Erev Shabbat, it means the eve of Shabbat, the day before Shabbat. So you say Erev Shabbat, you mean Friday. In Yiddish, when you say it, it means the end of Shabbat. It's the night of Shabbat. It's like saying Saturday night. The Hebrew Erev Shabbat means Friday. In English, Saturday night.
That's confusing.
You can't say in English Saturday's Eve. We don't say it. I don't know. This specific word I don't know in Yiddish. Sorry, I have an extensive Yiddish vocabulary, but I miss on this one. Ich weiß nicht. And then ich weiß nicht, in other words. So anyway, the Aggadah definitely says here that the midah of the Talmid Hacham is כשתלמיד Hacham נכנס אצלו, when someone comes to ask him a question, שואלו במדרש, אומר לו בהלכות, אומר לו בתוספות, אומר לו בהגדות, אומר לו, whatever he's asked, he can have a dialogue and answer. But I think also the beauty of this midrash is, like we analyzed yesterday, the subtleties of the midrash, is the first two types of people that he mentions. He takes an analogy from stones that are used for construction, that are sunk into the building. So again, you have this kind of rigidity, it's a rigidness. Once it's in the building, it's stuck there, it doesn't move anywhere. So the person who only knows halakha, only knows midrash, is limited within those 4 amot, the 4 cubits of halakha. There's no room for manipulation or like a wiggling room to make discounts or exceptions when needed. But the one who's psefas, that could fit anywhere, the way people used to work with mosaics was very interesting. Is they had stones. They would paint them in many different colors and hues, right? And if it doesn't fit here, it's not like a puzzle. If it doesn't fit here, they'll fit it there. They play with it until they find the right place for it. And not only that, you don't. It's not each one of them. Each one of these stones is unique. Unlike the construction units, they're all the same. You put one. You could put like you take when you build it. After you build it, you have to more or less return it to the same order. But from 1 to 10, if you would have changed the order, and you put your bricks 10 to 1, it would be the same thing. With the mosaic stone, it's not the same. It has to fit in a specific place. But when you take a couple of steps back, that's when you can appreciate the whole picture. From close up, you just see patterns of color. When you back up, you realize the mastery of how they used to do with playing with light and shade to create the effect of depth and all that. So this, I think, is all alluded to in the words of Rabbi Shamu, saying that the real way to learn Torah is to be able to connect to all other concepts of Torah and of human life. And when you do that, you can see the full picture. Right? The Torah is not limited just to the Bet Knesset, not just to one action.
It's even more than that.
Yeah.
I think that when you do that, it also undertakes part of you. In other words, of your own.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So it's right. Some
You
creativity
have
is sunk into the thing. Right.
Into it, where it's one block. There's no creativity.
Exactly.
In other words, you take what's there and you place it from one place to another, but it does not.
Right. So it adds. It adds a creative element. Okay. We'll stop here. Baruch Chodesh Tov. Baruch Adonai. Le'olam. Amen. Ve'amen.